Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I'm really excited to welcome a really wonderful podcast guest to the show today, and it's Bruce Langford. Hi Bruce, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Julia?
I'm doing great. Bruce, I am really pleased to have you on the podcast. I was just recently invited to speak on your podcast and I just got out of it. And, sometimes people have like a special energy around them and special connection. And I really felt that with you. So I'm super excited to have you on the show today.
Great. And I'm super excited to be here. I'm really honored, Julia, to be invited on your show. Thanks so much.
It's my pleasure. Bruce, I always start my podcast with, where are you located? What time zone are you in? And what have you been up to up until this conversation today?
Well, I am located in London, Ontario, Canada. So that's near Toronto. It's halfway between Toronto and Detroit. You know where Detroit is. Anyway, So what time zone is it? Well, it's the Eastern time zone, same as New York. Mm-hmm. So it's been a really good day. I've been very busy doing a lot of podcast editing and organizing my podcast episodes and just really getting a lot of things organized that I need to have ready for the next couple of months. So that's what I've been doing today, Julia.
Very nice. Tell us more about your podcast. What's the name of the podcast? What do you talk about in your podcast?
Well, my podcast is called Mindfulness Mode. So it's all about mindfulness. And really, I like to interview lots of different people from all walks of life who use mindfulness in one way or another to stay grounded and to stay focused. And so many people that I've heard on podcasts have mentioned that they have something in their life that just keeps them on track, whether it's maybe every day they spend time in nature, or they swim, or they do yoga, or sometimes they're a reader. They like to read for a half an hour every day. But these practices are something that can really help us stay grounded. So we talk a lot about that on the show.
Mm-hmm. And when did you start with the podcast?
I started in 2015.
Wow.
So 2015. So this is 6 years now.
6 years. And how many podcast episodes?
Around 720.
Wow. That's lots of work. And I know that you have over 2 million, I think, podcast downloads. Am I correct?
Yeah, almost 3 million. It's just about to turn 3 million. Yes.
Wow. Congratulations. That's an amazing achievement.
Thank you.
Today, I want to talk with you about bullying, because that's kind of, I think, when I understand correctly, and you can tell us a little bit more about this, how you kind of got started with the podcast in the first place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I worked in bullying prevention for over 10 years before I started the podcast. So I was a music teacher in a school. And I really enjoyed teaching. I really enjoyed being a music teacher and writing songs and doing musicals and just sharing my love of music with the students. And that was really exciting for me. But what wasn't exciting was when I noticed that certain students were being bullied and certain students were just, so unhappy and so stressed because their life was miserable. They were being bullied. And so when I realized that so many people were being bullied, I thought, I could do something about this. So I decided to put together a musical program about bullying that could teach children and teachers of all ages about how to deal with bullying, so that bullying would not be such a terrible problem with so many people. So I went on the road and I presented these live shows thousands of times. So
Wow.
yeah, so I've been on stage. Well, it's about 1,850 times that I presented the shows.
Wow.
So yeah,
Incredible.
really exciting because I was able to integrate different things like playing musical instruments and uh, just ways that I could grab the audience and make it interesting, and also be teaching about what is bullying and what does the bystander do, what is the bystander's role, how can we minimize this. And before long, I soon realized that if I could teach students and teachers what it meant to be mindful and to teach them about mindfulness, then bullying would begin to decline on its own. And so then I
Mm.
started to include more and more elements of mindfulness in my shows until I got to 2015, when I decided to start the podcast about mindfulness. And on almost every show on the podcast, I will ask the guest, do you have a story about bullying where mindfulness would have made a difference? So I integrate mindfulness and bullying. And at first, a lot of people didn't see the connection. They didn't think that there would be a connection between those two things, but there really is a very, very strong connection, because if you have a mindful outlook on life, you're probably not going to be bullied as much as other people, because a lot of times when
Mhm.
people live with a victim mindset, then they are a target for bullying, and it becomes a huge problem for those people many times.
Mhm. Okay, we need to dissect all of this a little bit more, because I think it's really interesting. Let's start with the question, what is bullying?
Well, bullying is a repeated pattern of mistreatment. So whether it's in schools and with students and children, or whether it's in the workplace, that's what bullying is. It's a persistent pattern of mistreatment that causes either physical or emotional harm. And there was a time when I would ask these questions about bullying, and many people, in their minds, they would quickly go to physical bullying. They would think, oh,
Mhm.
I was hit, or I was
Pushed
pushed, or I
around.
was
Mhm.
abused. And of course, that can be bullying for sure. But
Mhm.
there's an awful lot of bullying that is not physical, it's emotional. And
Mhm.
especially since the internet has become such an important part of our lives, there's a lot of social bullying on the internet using social media platforms. So that's
Mhm.
a real problem. But bullying can include verbal bullying, nonverbal. It can be passive aggressive, and it can be psychological. And of course, like we mentioned, it can be physical abuse as well. So bullying is very humiliating for anyone that's experiencing this. It's absolutely terrible to deal with.
Mhm. And so, how can you use then mindfulness in order to manage or handle a situation where you feel like you're being bullied?
Well, the first thing is to be aware of your emotions. And that's
Mhm.
a big part of mindfulness in the first place, is to
Mhm.
learn how to notice your emotions, identify them, be aware of your emotions, and then have some ability to choose how you are going to react to those emotions. Because
Mhm.
many times the people who are doing the bullying are looking for a reaction. What they
Mhm.
want, what's going to light up the uh, centers in their brain that they're looking to light up, is when you get very angry, you
Mhm.
completely, lose it, you become obviously humiliated, and that's what feeds a bully. So it's
Mhm.
very important to be able to read your emotions, take a deep breath, or more, one or more, usually
Mhm.
more, and then be able to choose how you respond to that. So uh, it's very important to not take on that story that surrounds the bullying to the point where you identify so much with that story that you are that person, you are that victim, and you begin playing that victim role. And when you do, then you will start to think of yourself as a bullied person, and you will be bullied more and more.
I wanted to ask you that. Actually, I was thinking about it as you were speaking about it, because I was wondering if bullying can be a perception, if like because I feel like, because you mentioned victim mindset, and I'm thinking, if I am maybe an insecure person, or even like the next thing I'm thinking of, a very stressed person, right? We know that when you are in a stress state, you are you're emotionally hijacked, your amygdala is emotionally hijacked, and you are reacting more emotional to situations that usually in a calm state you wouldn't be reacting to. And I'm thinking, okay, so if I'm a really stressed person and I'm not really taking care of myself, then I might be perceiving that someone is bullying me, when in reality it might not be the case.
That is very true. That is very true. Many of us, me included, we can read a situation and then think, oh my gosh, that person said something or did something to humiliate me. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe they really didn't. Maybe that was just how I was feeling at that time, and I misconstrued what happened. And then my mind went there. And then once your mind goes there, of course, you can go to a lot of other places, and you can build a huge story around this.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the book, The Four Agreements, by Don Miguel Ruiz, who says, never take anything personally and don't make assumptions. And I feel like I'm almost talking about this book every single podcast, because it's so applicable to so many different situations. So I think that's a really good first step. And my next question, actually, which is, what are the options when you are really being bullied in the workplace? So I think we talked about awareness, and I think in that awareness piece, actually, what is important to talk about or think about as well is taking a step back and recognizing, is it just me creating a story, or is it really me being bullied? Maybe let's stop there for a second. How will people know? How can they know if it's really mistreatment or if it's just a story?
Well, if you give it time and space, usually you will begin to know. So if you really feel in your body, what are your emotions that are happening in your body? So in other words, you're not jumping to conclusions based on the story, and the story comes from up here, it comes from your head. So if you allow yourself to feel what your emotions are, and then you focus on those emotions in your body, give it time. And if you're like me and you might want to meditate on this, you might want to just give it some space, then you will have an opportunity to make a more rational decision as to whether this truly is bullying. And of course, there's a good chance that it could be bullying, but it's not the end of the world. Usually you have to weigh things in such a way that you realize that, well, these things happen, and there are ways to deal with it. There are ways to deal with it, not just one way, but there's a number of different ways to deal with it, for sure.
Okay, so that brings me to that question of, what are the options, right, when you're being bullied, and what are those?
Yeah. So if you're in the workplace, one of your options is to talk to, somebody like your office manager, your superior, it could be human resources, depending on where you work and how your organization is laid out. So you definitely may need to go and speak to somebody in confidence that you trust, and see what can be done. Many times it can be resolved before that happens. There are situations where you can deal with it directly with the person. Maybe it's a situation where you can avoid that person for a certain period of time. Sometimes avoidance is a good answer. It isn't always. It isn't always the right answer, but it can sometimes be. And you can sometimes talk to a friend that you can confide in, somebody that you know you can trust. That can be a help. So there are a number of things that you can do before you start to make more drastic decisions. Like maybe you decide to make a decision to change departments, to move to a different job within your organization, or, you know, as more of a last resort, you might decide to leave that job and work, you know, at another company or become self-employed. You know, there are choices that way. So those are some of your choices.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's actually really helpful to just talk through, because to see, hey, there's actually so many different options and so many different ways this can pan out. So hopefully, you know, the person that is being bullied is not feeling desperate or, you know, afraid of what's going to happen, which, you know, I'm sure it's a common feeling, but yeah.
It is. There can be a lot of fear around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of fear. And so, okay, so I love this. So mindfulness can really help basically to create awareness around this is happening. These are the emotions that I'm experiencing in my body. And then I am deciding, is this just a story or is this something that's really happening, maybe repeatedly happening? And then there's the different options from ignorance and avoidance to maybe talking with the person about it, but then also obviously to talk with a superior, leaving the company, leaving the job, all of these different things, or leaving the role in the team or the company. Wow. And I'm very curious. So you were talking about the bullying musical. And so how did you move, you know, how did you decide to like stop that and then move into what you're doing today?
Well, I made the decision based on the fact that the internet was becoming more and more of a way that people were connecting with each other. And I was doing a lot of traveling. So I was, you know, traveling for 2, 3, sometimes 4, 6 hours a day. I was doing a lot of traveling, and it was a lot to then go to a location and set up. Like I had a lot of equipment and everything, and set all this up and then tear it down. And now I had, you know, I had an assistant who helped me with all this, but at the same time I thought, okay, much more is being done to connect with people online, so I need to do some transitioning. And so that's exactly what I decided to do, and that's when I started the podcast.
Very cool. And did you hear of any powerful stories from people being bullied that obviously found the musical helpful and applied some of the specific strategies that maybe stuck with you over the years?
Oh yeah, I heard all kinds of stories, and I remember one time I went to a presentation, and just before I could get started, this person came up to me, and I believe he was in 9th grade, and he came up to me and started talking to me, and he said that he had heard me 3 years earlier at his other school that he used to go to, and he said that I had talked about you know, some of these concepts about, you know, don't become a victim, and how you can stand up against bullying, because that was the name of the show. So I talked about different ways that you could practically stand up against this, and just sort of pull yourself together and be more confident and move forward. And I told a story about, and I told this story through a song, and he still remembered the song that he had heard 3 years before. And he said, yeah, in that song, the person in the song just decided to join I was going to say a club, but he really decided to join the school band in that particular case. And he started learning to play an instrument, and he started to feel empowered and confident as a result of the skills he was developing. So he got connected to other people and started to really get fascinated with that particular aspect of, you know, playing a musical instrument. And that really helped with the situation that he was in, because he was being bullied by someone, and that bullying situation became much less of an issue in his life, because he was now, you know, he had replaced some of this with a passion that he really cared about. And so the bullying seemed to minimize. And he talked about how this presentation I had done had impacted him so much that when he got to his high school, he decided to start a club for people. And this club was for people who felt ostracized, for people who felt like they were not a part of anything. And he wanted them to come out and be part of this club. And so he was really proud because his principal had given him an award at their last assembly because he had stepped out and made this initiative. So, and he said, "Oh, and it was all because of you, Mr. Langford." I thought, wow, that's
so
kind of cool.
That's an amazing story. Do you remember the lyrics from the song?
Well, I think the song was called Confidence. And so part of the song went, confidence, confidence, no matter how bad it gets, confidence. And then it kind of went on about what you could do in order to regain your confidence and pull yourself up. And it had this chorus that really, it had a strong driving beat, and it was very repetitive. And so sometimes I would go back to these schools and the kids would see me and they would start singing that song, that chorus.
That must, I mean, how does that feel for you when that happened?
Well, that was really exciting. Yeah, it felt really great that I was not only able to connect with the students, but that the music was something that they retained. They remembered, they remembered the messages because of the music. So that was my goal. I was really happy that was the way it worked out.
Yeah, such a beautiful story. And so I know that you're also doing hypnosis.
Yes.
That's not the right pronunciation, hypnosis.
Yeah,
How did you get into that?
Yeah, well, hypnosis is something that I never thought that I would be involved in, because I didn't really, for one thing, I didn't know much about it. But what happened was I was fortunate enough to interview this wonderful woman for my podcast named Erica Flint. And so she wrote a book called Can You Be a Hypnotist? And I thought, well, that's intriguing. And I thought, no, I don't think so. But I thought it's certainly an intriguing title. And so before the interview, I read the book. And I thought, well, that is a very, very interesting book. And it opens up a whole lot of ideas that I had never thought of before. And so when she came on the show and I interviewed her, she told me, she said, "Bruce, I think you are a perfect candidate to be a hypnotist. And here's why." And she told me a list of reasons, because I'm used to talking to people. She felt that I was a good listener. And she said, the sound of your voice is just right for hypnosis. And she told me a lot of different things. And so I thought, well, that's very interesting. And she said, and through hypnosis, you can help people in incredible ways. People who are going through tremendous anxiety or stress, or they have habits they want to break but just can't. You can make a huge impact in people's lives. And I thought, well, that sounds good. I really want to be able to do that, because I haven't been enjoying that sort of thing for years, helping people, with their, issues. So I decided to take the training, and she has a hypnosis school where she teaches many, many people the art of hypnotism. So that was exciting. So I took the course and became a hypnotist. And so now I've had quite a few clients that I've worked with in this field.
How long is that ago?
That was only a year ago.
Oh, wow.
It was only a year ago, and I began to get clients right away. Most of them because of my podcast. They heard me on my show and thought, well, I'll reach out to Bruce and maybe he can help me with these issues. And I was very honored and very pleased that I was able to help them with certain issues in their lives.
For people that have not learned so much about hypnosis or don't know what it is, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is or what it does and how you help people?
Yeah. First of all, a lot of people, when they hear about hypnosis, they think of a show they saw in Vegas, or, they saw some show on stage somewhere, or even on TV. And of course, stage hypnotism is something that many of us think of because it's it's fairly prominent. But using hypnosis to help people with stress, anxiety, and habits and mindset is using some of the same techniques, but it's very different from stage hypnosis. So for one thing, it's been approved by the medical community since 1958 as a bona fide technique to help with pain and to help with stress. And so it's certainly become mainstream in many ways. And so the thing is, if you're being hypnotized, you still have control. You are still in control. It's not like me thinking, oh, I'm going to take control of this person's mind. It's not like that. It's something where many times it can be a childhood trauma that has caused an issue, and it's just holding us back. It's just causing, a certain part of our brain to operate in a certain way so that you just can't get ahead in that certain aspect. You just can't kick that habit, or you just feel stressed under certain situations and you don't know why. And so through hypnotism, I can dig in and learn what it is that is causing this and help you to attach a different set of thoughts with that event, so that you are no longer trapped by what's happened in your life. And it's just something that can make huge change, and it doesn't take so long to do it. It's not like you have to have years of counseling to get through this situation. It can happen in just a few sessions.
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a hypnosis last year, I think, for the first time. And I was very curious and a little nervous because I didn't really know. And it was actually also a podcast guest who hypnotized me. I met him really randomly through a YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel, he has a podcast, and we started talking, and we just kind of connected. And I went through a lot of emotional trauma last year, and so he, we kind of connected, and he offered to do a hypnosis session. And for the listeners, again, just to know what's kind of happening is this, we know all that we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, and we are operating a lot in the conscious mind, and we don't sometimes know what's really happening in the subconscious mind. But most of our beliefs, like behaviors, habits, they are all stored in that subconscious, unconscious mind, because it's helping us to be faster, right, to make decisions and have this like autopilot. And so with hypnosis, you basically access the subconscious mind, and helps you to access it, just like meditation does. That's basically the same idea of what meditation is doing as well, if you're doing it correctly. And so that was my experience, that it actually felt like a really nice, deep meditation. And I had a very interesting hypnosis. It felt really nice. It felt really relaxing, and it was very interesting what came up for me at the time. And it really helped me just to access a little bit more of the insights that I was looking for. And I thought it was wonderful. So
that's fantastic.
I think it's really cool that you're doing that. And so you're also using hypnosis for bullying?
Yes, I use it in my coaching. So many times there are incidences that happened in someone's life, maybe when they were a small child or a kid, or maybe even in their teenage years. Sometimes bullying incidents happen, and that has caused a certain thought pattern to happen in their mind, and they just can't seem to get past it. And sometimes they are not even aware that that's what's going on. They're not aware that, it was that bullying situation that has caused this. And there are instances where the person doesn't even remember the bullying situation until I hypnotize them and take them back. And then we open that up, and it's like, oh my gosh, that happened to me. And usually then they'll start to remember. Then they'll start to put the pieces together and go, oh my goodness. And then, like I said earlier, we reattach a new pattern of thoughts with that story, and then the person is able to move forward. So it makes a huge difference for people.
And they do remember what they've been going through in the hypnosis. I think that's really important to
Yes,
note as well. So yeah, so you do
exactly.
remember
Yeah.
what you're going through. It's just, yeah, you're just in a very relaxed state. Super cool. And so I'm curious about one last thing. I'm curious about more things, but I guess for today's podcast, I'm curious about one thing. You mentioned social bullying.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important topic. What has your experience been, maybe personally, but also just, being in this world of podcasting and social media? What have you been seeing, and what are things that we can use in the social context when we feel like we're being bullied?
Well, because of social media being the way it is, we feel like we need to be, we need that approval. We need that stamp of approval. We want our lives to look acceptable on social media. And, so many people are able to make their life look glowing and beautiful and glamorous and all of these things. And, it's just human nature that we want to point out things to others that are positive in our lives. But some of us are very sensitive, and some of us take it all almost like just on the surface, on the face of it, and we think, oh my goodness, my life is just so boring and dull and not very exciting compared to all these other people. And then there's a lot of depression that happens and a lot of discouragement, and people don't feel they have the confidence to move forward. And so it's very important to realize that real life is not the same as life on social media. And so sometimes people just need to
100%.
step away. Sometimes you just need to be willing to just step away from social media. You don't have to spend so much time on it and be so attached to it and feel like, oh my gosh, I put a post on and only 24 people liked it or whatever it is. Sometimes it just becomes such a need that it has too much control over our lives. So it's important to put everything into balance and not take it as such an important aspect in our lives.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I'm, very active on social media, and I also sometimes think, I obviously usually just post about the good things. I'm trying to be more authentic and also post about when I'm not feeling great, right? But it's so much harder.
It is.
Yeah, it is so much harder. And, and I think that all the time, because I'm obviously experiencing it, that I'm like, okay, what I'm seeing as well from other people is also just, a layer of what their whole life experience actually is and looks like. I think one of the other things that's been really resonating with me over the years is that, I think just as you said with the bullying, or with the person that is the bully, the people that are making comments and people that are, maybe triggering you in a way, they just, lack love or lack confidence and lack attention in their own life, and that's why they're projecting that and onto you, and then maybe trigger you. And so I think, when I see, negative comments, which fortunately hasn't happened to me very much at all, but I always think, I just send them love and compassion, honestly. And I think, wow, this person seems to be in a really bad place that they have to make a comment like this, and yeah, and I feel like with that mindset and with that perspective, it is so much easier to not take it personally and to not make assumptions and to not feed into the story that you might be telling yourself at that point, but to just be like, I'll send this person love and and compassion. And I think if I would be influenced by what other people think, then I wouldn't do the work that I'm doing today. But the work for me is so important that I always tell myself, with the right people, it will resonate. And with the people that it doesn't resonate, that's totally okay. I'm not targeting 7 billion people on the planet. And right. We are all different. And I think you and I talked a little bit about this even after our conversation on your podcast last time. So yeah. Bruce, do you have a morning routine?
I definitely do. Yes, I very much do. My morning routine has changed. a few times. It gradually changes. But one of the things I do is I get up and I run for an hour. And I just really enjoy that. And it turns out to be about 4 miles. Usually, I think it's around 4 miles.
Okay.
And
just
it's
turning
in
off my
nature.
heat here while you speak, because I can hear my heat go on. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I live in a rural community. I don't live right in the city. So I can be out in nature and enjoying the trees and enjoying the weather. And I've gotten to the point where I enjoy it almost no matter what the weather. Like I enjoy the snow. If it's raining, I still go out. I just really enjoy it. And what I do is I do self-hypnosis while I run. And so I just absolutely love that too, because it's like meditating basically. And you already said that it's much like running meditation. And so that's the beginning part of my morning routine, is just getting out there every day. It started with walking, because I've never been, like, in my life, I was never a runner. I was never even the slightest interest in running at all. And I never thought I would ever be a runner. And then I decided to start walking. So I walked every day for a year or two. And then one day I just thought, maybe I just like to run a bit. And then as I did it, I realized how much I truly enjoyed it. So now I do it every day.
That's incredible. Amazing. And through the years, have you had a book that you felt like had a really powerful impact on you, that maybe you've been rereading over and over again because it's just the message always resonates with you in a different way?
Yeah, this book is a very impactful book, and it's called The Surrender Experiment. And it is very interesting, a very easy read. It's you read it kind of like almost like a novel. It's just a very easy read. And I love how the author sort of makes almost like a cliffhanger at the end of each chapter. I remember the first time I read it, I could just hardly put the book down, because I'd read a chapter and then he'd just leave you hanging, and then you'd go back in. It's like, oh, it feels so good to feel, to know how he handled that cliffhanger. And so the book is called The Surrender Experiment, and the subtitle is My Journey into Life's Perfection. And it's written by Michael A. Singer. And it's just a very, very easy book to read. And if you're just starting to venture into mindfulness, it's a terrific book, because this man truly is mindful. He's a meditator, and he illustrates in the book how he just decided to just let go and let his life flow the way it just would flow. And he made this decision to just let things happen. And it was quite incredible what happened. So I highly recommend it.
Amazing. I'll definitely download it on my Audible app. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I am so happy that we got to talk on the show today. How can people connect with you if they're interested to learn more?
Oh, yeah. Just connect with me through my podcast, mindfulnessmode.com. And you can email me, bruce@mindfulnessmode.com. And a lot of times I have different meditations and different things that I like to give out as free gifts. And so I have one that's actually a 30-minute meditation, which is a guided meditation. And I made it available to my followers, but it's a paid thing. So I want to offer it to your followers as a free download. So in order to get this 30-minute meditation, all you have to do is email me, bruce@mindfulnessmode.com, and put 30-minute meditation in the subject line, and I'll send it to you for free. You don't have to pay for it. So
amazing. Thank you so much.
I'd like to do for your listeners. You're welcome.
I think
Julia.
I'm going to email you too. I'm curious to listen to the meditation. You do have some meditations on Insight Timer as well. I actually forgot to mention that, but I think that's really great as well that you have some on there.
Yeah. I like doing that. I have a few on Insight Timer, and I've received some really positive feedback from that.
Great. Well, again, this was a pleasure. I knew that we're going to get into some really interesting conversations. So thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to join us on the podcast. And I wish you all the best for the future and a very happy Thanksgiving. Oh, you don't actually have Thanksgiving in Canada. You've already passed that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm kind of late.
That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay.
But anyway,
you have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay.
All right, Bruce. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Bye, Julia.
Bye.